Just sharing my photos from a roll I took this week. This is P30, sort of advertised as an 80 speed film. I shoot it at more like 30 and do like a box speed development on that. So, you might think of it a little bit as pulling the film. I don't know. I can't tell that this isn't a 30 speed film, but I'm shooting with a Leica MP. I set my light meter to 30 and just meter normally. The lens is, with the exception of one image, is a Leica 35mm Summicron version 1, also known as an 8-element or the 8-element. So some of what I'll talk about is where the character of the lens is really popping out. I will point to that, right, the good and the bad. So this was a quick trip down to Oakland to visit my cousin, prompted by I'm a fan of the Sacramento Kings basketball team. They made the playoffs for the first time in forever, and they were in a game 7 with the Golden State Warriors. It just felt like I needed to either see them win that game or be there to applaud them for an amazing season, like a standing ovation at the end of a Broadway play. So I went down there. This was a very fast, almost like a 24-hour trip. Okay, this photo is just in the Portland airport. I hadn't seen this thing before. It's where kids can play inside the van. I am a fan of Tillamook. I, I eat pretty much all of the products that are on top of that van. But I like the way the light was coming in, and some of this was just I was, kicking time in the airport. All right, let's go. Came around to the other side and just wanted to see these rooftop goodies a little closer. I also got a kick out of you see in the bottom right, it says "Do not climb." I don't know. I like the idea of a kid trying to get up there and climb on top of the Tillamook mudslide. Which, if you haven't tried Tillamook mudslide ice cream, um, you should try it. See in the background though, here on the left, you get this stuff hanging from the ceiling, which is going to feature prominently in my next shot. Yeah, I took a couple of shots here. One where it was more about the people down low, and one where I went more to the ceiling. I like this one here that was more about the things hanging from the ceiling a little better. Um, I don't know, not an amazing shot, more just passing time in the airport. Okay, so I mean, I barely made it there in time. Like, I landed and it was a rush. We actually were running, and we got there and teams were warming up. Um, and this is from our seats, so we were way up high. Um, and um, this is the only picture I took of the game. I took a bunch with my phone. It was about the atmosphere. I wanted more of the sound. Um, but now that I've seen this picture, I wish I would have taken more. This turned out better than I thought it would. My favorite player is this number 0 right here, Malik Monk. Um, but yeah, my cousin did a good job of getting us seats there in the middle. All right, there's my cousin. All right, so I know this is the version 1 Summicron. You see a little bit of ghosting. We've got flare and some ghosting. Um, yeah, I won't pass judgment on that. Just pointing it out. I almost didn't take this, right? It's sort of a boring photo, but I was just drawn to the lines, lots of diagonals and verticals, and I don't know. There's some geometric interest. This is also right by my cousin's place, so but won't be making a print of that. The statue, my cousin takes a lot of pictures of it, and so I just kind of wanted to, in the spirit of visiting him, to get my take on it. It's kind of a contrasty light, and yeah, I like it. Back here, this is this background blur. Oh, I've got, there we go. This background blur. Right, that's characteristic of the lens. Sort of that, yeah, first Summicron was like it's has a vintage character, but it's definitely in the direction of modern. It's a nice kind of in between. Yeah, this is interesting up here too. Right, it doesn't just go away, right? It becomes, there's some visual intrigue there, but it's not ugly. It's true of the early Summicrons is they kind of equally prioritize forward bokeh and back bokeh. Um, which kind of means that they didn't perfect the background bokeh like has become the standard now. I just like the way the sunlight was striking the truck. This semi that's like parked on the street, sort of like, it's just any old car. Um, yeah. I like the way the railroad track came in, kind of swervy. Yeah, I made sure to include it in my foreground. And I also like the mural on that building. I'm tipped a little sideways. It's something about my process here is like if you look at the borders of this image, right? I'm showing you my scan, right? At the very top, you can see the edge of the film, and then on the left, you see the black, right? This you're like we're getting a full view of the frame on the film. I like that, but it also means I can't adjust tilt. Um, I've got to get it right when I take the picture, and I got to get it right when I scan it. But I kind of like it. It kind of moves me away from this temptation to try to straighten everything. And I don't know, on one hand, it encourages me to, be right through more steps of the process, but it also makes me more tolerant of the imperfection. This one, shooting P30. This is early morning. It's like 7 o'clock. Inside my cousin's apartment, and I'm shooting a 30 speed film. So, um, I go f2 and I think 1/15th of a second, and it was still underexposed. So I added contrast just to kind of save the image and make it more graphic. I didn't really have any detail on the cat, but I like how it turned out. That's Larry. This one just has some personal significance. I know what the ducks mean to my cousin, and well, halfway. And it's always interesting to see what books people have on their shelves. But this was just like an early morning, like, kind of play before I drink a cup of coffee. What the morning light was creating. I get pretty excited about this one. I know it's not a wall hanger, but I really like the tones. Composition's pretty good, but I definitely get excited about, right, the contribution of both of the black and white film, but also of the lens. The the lens has a little bit, I mean, it's really flaring, but it has that kind of wraparound light where kind of the shadows borrow a little bit of the brightness in the highlights, and you get a little bit of lift um, in your shadows. And yeah, I just like those gray tones there. Um, I also had a chance to catch somebody walking through with their dog, but it didn't quite nail it, and the dog ended up behind one of the leaves, and that didn't look right. So I kept this one. And this is very little editing on the computer, um, and I liked it just kind of right out of the scanner. Um, but I also wanted to kind of see. This is less of like, I wasn't trying to improve this as much as, right, this is a silver dense film. And so, in my mind, that tells me that I should be able to recover the highlights pretty aggressively. And so I just this was my best frame on the roll, just to kind of play with that. Right, this was a little more just straight out of the scanner. And that's not amazing highlight recovery, but maybe it is. I don't know. Just a quick little play. This is my cousin's apartment. He's got a pretty cool old warehouse renovated apartment thing. I think 29-foot ceilings, he said. But really, this is a picture of the cat, Larry, right? And again, an early morning shot, just trying to make something out of really low lighting. My cousin and I went on a little photo walk in his neighborhood. I walked over to take a picture through the fence. I couldn't decide if I wanted to include the fence or shoot through the fence, and actually had ended up deciding I was just not going to take a picture. And then my cousin entered the picture, and I always like trying to get him when he doesn't know it. He does the same to me. This might be my favorite from the roll. Um, when I found this, it felt like a little bit of like there's nothing here that would catch most people's attention. But I found a combination of shadows across the wall and textures in the wall and um, kind of the foreground grass, right? And then that one thing up there on the wall that's casting like a long shadow, right? That was just adding up to me is something that would look good in black and white. And when I looked at this frame, I was nervous that it was underexposed. It was a pretty thin negative, but then it actually ended up looking really good. I had to I had to bring in some contrast editing. Um, I don't know. It's got me. One, I really like. I just like the photo. Right. Personally, if I was going to pick one to print and hang, it might be this. It'd probably be this one. Um, but it's also got me thinking about like how thin do I want my negatives? Some people that are better at this than me that I trust, say for scanning compared to darkroom printing, you do want a thinner negative. But you definitely don't want to go so thin that you don't actually have that important details are in the toe and are crushed and they're not even showing up. But if you can get just beyond that, um, right, and this is a good example of that. It's pretty thin negative, but yeah, I did actually get everything I wanted um, up onto the middle of the curve. Right here, I just like that this railroad track curves and goes straight into a building, and that's not like a sliding door, right? That's like a permanent building. So, it's just a totally unused railroad track that they've had to just build on top of. Um, and I also like the way the sunlight was coming in behind that tree. And yeah, I knew I was risking some pretty bad flare with this old Summicron, so I had to try to really hide the tree in just the right spot. And I still did get some flare, um, but it's not overwhelming at all. Um, yeah, I thought that tree has kind of an interesting shape to it. I like this photo a lot. This is another one that I would put on the short keeper list. Um, I mean, I love the mural, and I wanted, I didn't travel with my filters. I wish I'd had an orange filter, maybe even a red filter, to really make the sky, darker and help that cloud really pop out. But it still does a pretty decent job. And I guess it's nice that the top does have lighter tones compared to the bottom of the image. I even kind of like how the cracks in the road, kind of start at the bottom of the frame and come in. So yeah, I also like that it says Oakland, right? That was just because this was my 1 day trip in Oakland. So yeah. Yeah, I try not to. It's not that I don't want pictures of my cousin or people, but I know not everybody wants to be in every picture. But this is one I just felt like I had to get. Um, Larry, his cat, is being really affectionate and sweet, which I'm a big cat guy. And also in the background, there's a Thunder jersey, which is pretty cool, and a nice little token of this year. My cousin and I have both been NBA fans. Now this one is not shot with the 35mm. I borrowed my cousin's 50mm Leica Apo, and I shot this at f2. It's a cool lens to borrow for a minute. And well, one reason I don't have a lens like that, other than it being too expensive for me, is that if I had a lens like that, I would just shoot pictures like this all the time, right? F2, you know, isolate subject, beautiful background, bokeh. Um, I mean, this isn't the most beautiful background ever, but it does show off just the pure ability of the lens, and it's remarkable. So the form factor on that lens was surprisingly nice too. Um, yeah, might make it on my. I'm pretty happy with the 50s I have, but you know, it's always nice to have something on the wish list. Okay, back to my 35. Yeah, here I'm just. This is the cat's toy. I thought this thing was pretty cool. Liked how the light was coming in and catching the feather. Um, this is a picture that I like a lot, and I don't at the same time I don't expect other people to really like it. Like, um, but this is just kind of where I'm a sucker for black and white photography, and it really is a little more about the tones, the lines, the black and the white. It just doesn't really matter what it's a picture of. I'm definitely not calling it a masterpiece. It's like, I don't know, barely good enough to keep. But I just kind of like these ones where you just kind of like find, you know, pretty random scene that is interesting in black and white. So, um, my cousin and I played with a medium format camera, and I took this picture basically, yeah, but with Ektachrome 4x5, right, slide film, and we developed it, and it turned out awesome. But I also was like, well, I should take a picture and with my camera just so I have a comparison of kind of what it would look like in black and white. Um, and I'm glad I did that. I like how this one turned out. I actually like it a lot. Sometimes it's like, we talk about how lenses render, and that's not a word that I'm super familiar like or comfortable using. But I think that's like you look to some of these out of focus areas, and right, it's not just that they are out of focus or blurry, but it's like how do they start to look? And this is a good example of where I feel like I really like how the out of focus objects are looking. Um, and it's different than just being out of focus. It's not noisy, it's not cluttered, it's not ugly, it's not just blurry. Um, somebody used the word like, it's how the lens draws, but I like that. But it's like, how does it draw? This kind of out of focus, especially in terms of kind of three-dimensional depth. Like, this is where I feel like some of the older Summicron lenses really um, do well compared to modern lenses, which have all prioritized like having a super flat in focus plane, and getting fast fall off, and those things to get prioritized a little more. In the early Summicrons, it was a little more around kind of making things attractive through depth. Um, yeah, so I definitely can separate out like the Light Lens Lab replica lenses from the real deal by doing some short focus distance, short focus distance testing, where the subject is very three-dimensional, and you can just see how the Summicrons look. They're just, yeah, more beautiful. I don't know. One thing I will say about P30 again is like that's a it challenges you with your shutter speeds, right? I haven't said it, but almost most of these shots, except the ones shot kind of in sun outside, right? I'm shooting at like 1/15th of a second. Um, like this one here, I think is 1/15th of a second. And I would say that there are, if I get into where I'm zooming in, it's like I do think I've maybe lost a little sharpness because of some 1/8 or 1/15 shutter speeds. But I mean, it's not enough for me to care about. But it's like if I was obsessed with trying to get a super sharp image, right? P30, even though it's a pretty sharp film, it's a little bit like slow shutters come into play. I like this photo just because this is an absurd amount of unclaimed mail in a relatively small apartment complex. I mean, I can't fathom how all this mail collected over the years? Like, how does this happen? Okay. Yeah, I like that little that plant in the middle, that kind of bottom middle one was the one that had really caught my eye, but I felt like there was enough going on full frame that this was an interesting photo. And also just these like two, you know, guard poles to protect these plants from being rear-ended by a car. Um, yeah, I think I nailed the exposure on this one too. I really like the tones on my primary subject there. My cousin just has a, um, he lives in a pretty interesting spot. This is like a still life that somebody made in the parking lot. Yeah, that guitar was really grabbing my attention, and um, yeah, the light at the time was nice. Right, for me, sometimes that's all it takes, right? It's like nice light, it's pretty interesting stuff, right? So, for my kids, they're like, "What are those skeletons? Are they real?" Yeah, I think I did shoot this at maybe 2.8. You can kind of see the edges. Um, this is hilarious. Well, no, it's not hilarious, Jason. I'm so sorry for saying that. So my cousin just said uh, that all the mailboxes got robbed. So it's not funny at all. It's just ironic that I was just talking about all the mail that was stacked up there by the doorway. Hopefully my cousin didn't have anything in those piles. That changes the mood of this video, but I'm close enough to the end. I'm going to push through. Okay, this is inside my cousin's apartment, and I found it really, this is early morning. I'm like just waking up. I love, there's just a lot of history in this window. There's like different things that have been taped and maybe painted, and there's actually different types of glass in there. And kind of the one I focused on is like one of the very few, maybe only clear panes. Um, and then you also have like this interesting like film film photography artifact that my cousin has made. Um, Basically the same shot, but I wanted a vertical one too. And then here I'm showing that this really interesting thing that my cousin made where he like cut out all the frames and then used these little connectors to reconnect them. Yeah, now he's hanging them in the, at the window for backlighting. Are those chopsticks? So pretty creative display there by my cousin. Yeah, and he has this apartment of his is a photographer's dream. That's all I'll say. All right, take care.